Hi and welcome to WarHQ. What I'm going to do today is do a rundown of a competitive list that I recently took to an open play tournament in Australia, which was run at Mount Gravatt Warhammer store recently. And yeah, basically what I'm going to aim to do here is show you what I took, which I ultimately came second place with, got the silver, and see what you think. So these are my Drukhari. And what we'll do first is we'll just have a quick scan over them so you can sort of see the painting. And then I'll go through individually what was taken and what worked and give you a little bit of advice on what to run, what not to run, and what you're probably going to expect when using Drukhari in Kill Team at a tournament. So just looking at the models now, giving you a bit of a view of what I took, and you can see here it's quite eclectic. Like I've got a little bit of everything, and most of it's based off the mandrakes themselves, but we'll go into that in just a little bit. But for now, stay tuned. Okay, so let's have a look at the first section of this kill team, and I'll go through this roster as we talk. Now, the main focus of my team was these mandrakes. So anyone who knows anything about Drukhari knows that you can't take witches and racks or cabalites together and still maintain a sub-faction. So what I decided to do was take all three of those individual troop types, but complement them with mandrakes, like flesh them out with mandrakes, who I think, as far as the blades for hire go, I think mandrakes are your best bang for your buck. I think they are, you know, the cream of the Drukhari, really amazing troops. Now, as far as the mandrakes themselves go, I took 3 normal mandrakes. One of them was a combat and one of them was a zealot. And I also took 2 leader variants, so I should say Night Fiend variants. So one was a leader and one was a regular Night Fiend. I think in most of the games I played, the Night Fiend was generally taken as the leader. And he makes a pretty amazing leader because he's very hard to kill, very elusive, but also very powerful. Has good range attacks, good close combat attacks. So you can always pull him in for support when you need to, or you can keep him hidden. It's totally up to you. I was quite aggressive with my leader. I don't think I lost him once in the games that we played. So that is the Mandrake section of my roster. This is the Witch section of my roster. As you can see, it has 5 models. Now, I decided to go with the Witches, the Cult of the Cursed Blade subfaction or obsession. So this one gives you +1 strength, and you also get -1 to any of your shaken tests, which is very important too. And I did actually use that, not so much within the games themselves at the tournament. I didn't get to use the Witches as much as I wanted to, and that's because most of the teams that I fought were more elite based. I fought a couple of Marine teams, I fought AdMech, and I also fought Death Guard. So I was sort of, the Witches, unfortunately, who I think were the strongest combinations with the Mandrakes, I really didn't get to use much, but I have used them in some test games that we did. I've used them quite a lot in our own play here at WarHQ. So let's have a look at what I actually took with them. So the Hecatrix is there. She has a blast pistol and an agonizer, which is quite an effective kind of unit. We have 2 normal witches, which are just standard. We have 2 witch fighters. Now we have one with a shardnet and impaler, and we have one with a Hydra Gauntlet as well, a pair of Hydra Gauntlets. Now, the one with the Shardnet and Impaler was taken as a veteran specialist, and that's just to get her up there quick so she can wreck some face in turn 1 with a nice charge if required to. I think the Shardnet and Impaler really works well with that one, as it's a high damage weapon, damage 2 weapon. So that is the Witch section of my roster. Now, with the racks, most people run them as Prophets of Flesh, which gives you the extra +1 to your invulnerability saves, which is really strong. But for this tournament, I just had a feeling I wanted to make the racks my elite killers. So what I gave them instead was the Coven of 12 subfaction or obsession. So this one gives all of your hand weapons or your melee weapons an extra -1 to their AP, which I thought would be really strong because having run racks, like rack spam in particular, like with our test games and all the other games I've had, it's really the AP that lets you down. I mean, as far as when you fight elite teams, it's always that ability to get through the armor which stops you from damaging the enemy. So I thought with this one, I'd try out the Coven of 12. I used this team twice, I think, within the tournament with the racks and the mandrakes, and they were reasonably effective. I'm still not sold 100% on racks. I mean, everyone talks about them. I've used them a lot. They got nerfed and they lost one of their attacks. Like they went from 3 to 2 attacks, whatever it was, and that really hurt them. Like before that errata of the elites, they were quite strong. But upon saying that too, they're quite tough. Like as far as Pansy Elves go, they're pretty tough, tougher than your other models anyway, and a lot harder to take out of combat, and still have a 5-up invuln as well, even without the the bonus for the sub faction. So the AP is what I decided to go there. Would I do that again? I'm not sure. I think I did lose a few where I could have saved them on that 4. You know what I mean? That 4 dice roll for my invuln saves, but. Invuln saves are they're one of those things, it's kind of like a 50-50 most of the time. You're going to live or die. So anyway, that's what I took with them. As far as the roster itself goes, the Akathist is there. So the Akathist was armed with an electro-corrosive whip, which is a very strong weapon, and a stinger pistol, I believe. So he was quite powerful, and I took him as a veteran specialist. So he sort of counters the witch fighter, which was a veteran as well. So like they were for the alternative lists, obviously. The racks themselves, I took 2 rack gunners. So one had a liquefier and one had an ossifactor. Now the liquefier was a demolition specialist, which is super important in a rack list because the demolition specialist with a liquefier, anything behind cover, obviously you can get that +1 to the wound rolls, and then you can also spend a CP to get a further +1 to wound rolls. So those auto hits and then the bonus to your wound rolls really make the liquefier a brutal gun. To complement this, we have 3 normal racks, which were taken as well. And keep in mind, they just got homunculus tools, but with that Coven of 12, they're getting the -1 AP on all those homunculus tools too. So that made them a little bit stronger in the matches. And I think they performed fairly well for what they were intended for. Now, the Cabalite section of my force on the roster, what I took was the Cabal of the Flayed Skull as their sub-faction, Obsession. So basically what that one does is it takes away the hit penalty to obscurement. So you just don't get that -1 to hit from obscured targets, which I thought would be quite strong with these particular Cabalites, is because I took the heavy weapon variants, and that would make it easier to hit, obviously. Now, what we had here is we had the 2 Cabalite gunners. One had a blaster and one had a splinter cannon. The one with the blaster was a sniper specialist. We had a Sybarite who was a leader. So this one is the one that counters the other Night Fiend leader. So I would switch the Night Fiend leader for the Sybarite leader when I use this particular list with Cabalites. Now, the Sybarite himself, he had an Agonizer, a blast pistol, and was pretty good on that one. And he also had a Phantasm grenade launcher, so he was actually pretty teched out. And the idea with him is I could use that special tactic for the Phantasm grenades, try and do mortal wounds, that sort of stuff, and he could assist these heavy weapons while the Mandrakes went in and killed. Unfortunately, I didn't really get to use this Cabalite-centric list. And that was just, again, due to the opponents that I faced. I could have used it, but just didn't feel confident. I felt more confident with the rack list because I'd practiced it a lot more. And so that's how that went. The only other model we have to talk about here is the Clave X. And he's over here. Now the Clave X was probably probably the MVP of most of the games that I took him in. This thing is awesome for Drukhari. It is like literally their only model outside the grotesque that has multiple wounds. The Clave itself is brutal, and this guy can really use it well. With 4 attacks, it's pretty kick-ass. And he has a saving throw of 3 up, so he's like a marine, basically. And what happens with this guy, it actually throws the enemy off. I mean, if they're facing you, besides the Cabalites, they know that most of your guys are going to have invulnerability saves. So they go for volume of fire weapons, usually not with any AP or as little AP as possible because they're not required. So this Clave X, I found, was very survivable because he was getting attacked by weapons with low AP, and then he was just like a marine then. He was able to save most of the hits that came his way. So I do recommend throwing them in there as a bit of a curveball on your Drukhari force. They are expensive, but they're suitably powerful to pay for that expense. The first list variant that I took was what I affectionately call my Witch Drakes. So as you can see here, I'm using the full complement of witches in this particular force. Now, they include the Night Fiend leader and 3 regular mandrakes. 1 is a combat specialist and 1 is a zealot specialist. This is complemented by the witches themselves. So we have 2 standard witches, we have 2 witch fighters, one with Shardnet and Impaler and one with Hydra Gauntlets. The Shardnet and Impaler is a veteran specialist. And then rounding this out, we have the Hecatrix, who has a blast pistol and an agonizer. So with 9 models, this team has a breaking point of 5 losses. And this is a straight 100-point team, as per standard in Australia at the moment. Now, having a look at this, it's very mobile, so you have a very rapid deployment force. You have that ability to hot drop those mandrakes, up to 3 of them, behind enemy lines or wherever you want to place them for 1 CP. You also have a powerful veteran who can do an advanced move at the start for that first turn charge, who has really like a 2 damage weapon, which is very powerful as well. So very rapid force, this one. This is kind of the force that I'd taken in mind if I came across many Horde teams. Unfortunately, in this tournament, I didn't really come across a lot of Horde teams, mainly just elites. Even the Death Guard team that I faced was primarily Plague Marines and not so many Poxwalkers. So I didn't end up going with this team. I would have liked to give it a chance. As I stated before, use the Cult of the Cursed Blade, so they had +1 strength and then -1 to any shaken tests that they need to make. So that combined with the combat drugs really made them a bit more capable of damaging high toughness characters or models. So they were very powerful there. A lot of the test games I played, this was one of the best teams variants that I had. But it's just a draw when you go to these tournaments on what sort of teams you're going to be facing. And if I would have faced different teams, I would have used this quite extensively. It's probably the one that I practiced with the most before the tournament, and I found it very powerful. So yeah, there is the Witch Drakes. My second list variant, of which I used twice in the tournament, is what I would call my Rack Drakes. So what we have here, we've lost one of the mandrakes, so we have 3 now, one being the Night Fiend leader, and the other 2 being standard mandrakes, and one of them is a zealot. Now, as far as the racks go, we've taken the full complement of 6 that were available in the roster. One was the Akathist with the Electro Whip. We had 3 normal racks, and we had 2 rack gunners, one with the Ossifactor and one with a Liquefier gun, who was a demolition specialist. So having a look here, the Akathist, is also the veteran specialist. So kind of similar thing here to the Witch list, but these are tougher. These are much tougher models than the Witches. They're far more durable when you go to lose them, and that's a big thing. Now also, if you remember, what I did is I took the Coven of 12 as their sub-faction, so this gave me -1 AP extra on any of their attacks with melee weapons. So this boosted the Electro Whip, this boosted the Monculus tools, which made these a little bit more powerful at killing, anything with a decent save, or taking away anything, like even low saves would only take away. Say you're fighting orcs or something, then they wouldn't even get a save. So I thought this would be a powerful addition. It proved okay. The only match that I lost was actually with this list though. And I just found on that I primarily got just very poor dice rolls all around when I played that game, but that's how it rolls and that's how it goes. But I did face a very good opponent as well. So this list, as you can see, is really designed to get in fast. It's designed to kill elite models. You have the option with the 3 mandrakes again of dropping in wherever you want to place them in turn 1. You also have the veteran specialist who can get work done as well, and a little bit of heavy support with weapons. So ultimately, what I found a lot of the time in these matches that I played is that it was the mandrakes doing most of the killing. Most of the losses that I'd suffer would be racks, not making invulnerability saves, it happens. But the mandrakes themselves were dealing a lot of mortal wounds with those bale blasts. It's quite easy to roll a 6 on a wound roll, and a free mortal wound on something like a marine is very powerful, especially the 1 wound ones, like the non-primaris ones. So that was the idea with this team. It was my elite killer list. And, it had mixed results. It did its job on one occasion, it failed on the other. So, yeah, that is what I took as my second list variant. Now, variant 3 list I actually used this one twice. And this is because this is basically what I would call the Drukhari's version of an Eldar or an Azirani list, with its its elite sort of killing squad, with all your Exarch warriors and that. This is probably about as elite as the Drukhari can go, and as you can see here, I've taken the best of the best, and it actually worked really well. The 2 games I played with this, they had no sub-faction because obviously you can see here it's a soup mix. This has received various reviews online, this soup mixing. Is it a good idea, is it not? In this case it was. I played 2 competitive games in a tournament and won both of them with them. So that's just to show you that a soup mix can work in a tournament situation for competitive play. Now what I have here is the Clave X, and he did a lot of the work. He was pretty good, I've already talked about that. I have a Hecatrix with a blast pistol and an agonizer. I have a Night Fiend leader. I have an Akathist with an Electro Whip who's a veteran specialist. I have a Kabbalite gunner with a blaster who's a sniper. I have a Rack gunner with an ossifactor. I have a Mandrake who is a zealot, and I also just have a normal Rack to round out this list at 99 points. It is a little bit smaller than the other 2 variants that I've shown you so far with the 8 models, but it still has a 5 breaking point. So it doesn't lose anything on the break tests, it just loses it on the actual model count itself. But it didn't seem to matter. As I was fighting elite teams, this list worked really well. I had stuff, like all of this stuff packs a really hard punch. I mean, like everything's armed with a good weapon, basically. So chances are, if you are actually in combat or you're getting a shot off, that you're going to be doing something with it, with this list. So this is what I'd call an elite list. And it's a mix of the best troops within the list. And yeah, as I said, very successful. Many options available, but you do feel, pretty emboldened and empowered using this list as a Drukhari player, because most things are pretty durable and going to be in there for the long haul. So yeah, that's just another variant list. Here is the 4th variant of my roster lists, and this one is the Cab Drakes, I'd call it. Now, as you can see, what we have here is a mix. We have all of the Mandrakes, so we've got the Night Fiend, who isn't taken as the leader this time, and we have the 3 regular Mandrakes, one of which is a combat specialist, and one of which is a zealot specialist. We have the Clave X for a bit of hitting power there. And we have the Sybarite, who is a leader, has the Blast Pistol, Phantasm Grenade Launcher, and Agonizer. And we have 2 Kabalite Heavy Gunners, being the Blaster, who's a Sniper Specialist, and the Splinter Cannon. So this list here was taken as, we've already mentioned, the Cabal of the Flayed Skull. So that means that the Kabalites here wouldn't get an obscurement penalty to their hit rolls, which is pretty good. I didn't get to use this one in the tournament. I was a bit upset about it. It is a little bit smaller with only 8 models, but that's because you've got all the Mandrakes and the Clave X and the heavy weapons variants and a powerful leader, so they're all fairly expensive models. But I think it is quite strong. It would have its place. You have a lot of good close combat. You have a lot of good shooting. So it could have been an option for some of the elite teams that I fought, and I wish I would have been bold enough to use it, but in play testing, I'll play this one a little bit more, and I'll have to get back to you guys on just how strong it was. So this is the 5th list variant, and basically it's another soup mix. So what I have here is a mixture of things which wouldn't normally go together, so therefore has no sub-faction, or no bonuses from them anyway. Now, the idea with this team is volume of fire, volume of attacks. That's pretty much it. It was just literally, if I came across a big horde list like Tyranids or something, I could pull something like this to do heaps of damage to low AP targets. So, as you can see, the weapons, the heavy weapons that I've taken here to support are the Splinter Cannon and the Liquefier Gun. So Splinter Cannon for its attacks, Liquefier Gun for its auto hits, and volume of attacks as well. Now, we have 2 normal Witches, 3 normal Racks. We have the Cab Gunner with a Splinter Rifle, as I've mentioned, the Rack Gunner with a Liquefier, as I've mentioned, who's a Demo Specialist. We have a Night Fiend Leader. We have a Witch Fighter with a Shardnet and Impaler, who's a Veteran Specialist. And we have a Mandrake, who is a Zealot Specialist. So this is quite an effective list. As I said, we have the 10 model count, so it gives us a 6 break. So this makes this a lot harder to take out of action. And the amount of attacks that you can pull out of this list is pretty high. Didn't come across any Horde teams. I was hoping maybe the Pox spam or something I could have done, but wouldn't have had really many answers to the Plague Marines themselves, so I didn't go with this list. So that rounds out the 5 lists that I had in mind when approaching this tournament. My closing thoughts on this Drukhari roster for the tournament I took is that they were relatively powerful. They sort of did what I thought they would do in most cases. I think the real strength of the Drukhari kill team is the diversity of what they can actually take. I mean, it's like having 3 kill teams within one. And that's what I was sort of going for with this particular roster. I thought, you know what, maybe I can throw the enemy off. They won't know which of these kill teams that I'm going to take, either being the Kabalite, the Witch, or the Rack variants with Mandrakes, or some of the soup mixes. So I sort of hope to keep them on their toes. Don't know if my opponents had fought against Drukhari much. Around our area, I haven't seen many teams. I've only ever seen one, I think, one player who plays regularly in our tournament scene. But and he did pretty well. But yeah, this is just my sort of take on Drukhari and some of my thoughts about how they would run as an effective competitive roster if you're considering taking them to a tournament. Now, obviously, there's a lot of models here, and there's a lot of different box sets and different miniatures that you'd have to get to make this kill team. It's not like a one box fits all. You can see here that to get every variant of what I've got here is quite a bit of a mission. So a lot of these models, like some of them anyway, I got on eBay sites just so I didn't have to buy the whole box of 10 or something. Like example is the Clave X. That's an original, one of the older models, came in the little blisters. It's a metal model. The rest are all sort of the new sculpts. So, Drukhari, pretty fun team. You can take them as soup. You can take them as very specialized in one particular area. They excel at speed and rapid deployment. I mean, have some crazy shenanigans. I mean, with all the Mandrakes, you can get a lot of mortal wounds on your enemy. you can take decent shooting, particularly in your soup lists. You can take all the best of the guns if you want to. And you've got very decent close combat as well with some of the variants. So I think, as I was saying originally at the start, I think the mandrakes are very powerful and they shouldn't be underestimated. I mean, they're good in close combat, they have lots of attacks, they have excellent shooting. It's not very long range, but it's very powerful, and with that chance of getting mortal wounds as well, makes it even better. And the mandrakes themselves, like being harder to hit as well, with a -1 to hit them for all enemy, it just makes them really good. And that ability to deploy 3, sort of hot drop them anywhere on the board with 1 CP, it just makes them, primo. So I think, this is the team. I hope you've liked this breakdown. If you have any suggestions, or if you've played Drukhari, or you're interested, you've got questions on how Drukhari performed in certain situations within the tournament, or just in general play, please leave a comment below. Happy to talk to you about it. And for now, please like, comment, subscribe to our channel. Keep this going. This is another one of my more casual videos. I'll be doing a pretty in-depth breakdown on the Drukhari, and that'll be coming up pretty soon. Obviously, those videos take a little bit longer for me to make and to sort of compile. But just for now, this is just a little bit of a roster breakdown, show you what I took. It might inspire you to play Drukhari, or, hey, might not. So thanks for your time. Thanks heaps. This is WarHQ, and we're signing out.